Right then, another TT video, and this one has required me to make a few little notes, which I don't normally do. I normally just remember it all and broadcast it all, but there's a few things I didn't want to miss out on this. So if I stop or it looks like Danny's cut it, he has, because I've had to read my notes again. But anyway, so the TTs, we bought these a few weeks ago now. We've not really done much with them other than have a quick look at them. And there's definitely rectification work to be done. But that's not what this video is about. This video is sort of meant to be talking about how they became, why they're like they are, and what we're going to do with them. So I'll see if I can try and not miss things out and get them in an order that kind of makes sense, but I'm talking about stuff that I've heard second, third and fourth hand. So some of it might be factually incorrect, and anybody that worked on these or knows anything about these, feel free to comment and say I'm wrong or I did X, Y, Z for them. I'm easy. The stickers are pretty much done. A few more to do, but we'll pick that up on the next one. So basically, there's two of them, obviously, and they're identical pretty much. These started out as the hairdresser spec Audi TT, which is usually the base model one with not much going for it, but it was a decent spec really for what we needed. So it's front wheel drive. Everybody keeps asking if it's four wheel drive, so I thought I'd get that clear. The DSG, which this is the newer gearbox, which it's a DQ 250, but it runs all the same bits, which what's that called? 09D gearbox. So 6-speed still, not the 7-speed, and this is 230 horsepower standard, which is a CHHC engine, which is basically a Golf GTI. So pretty decent for what they are, pretty good with a tune. I think these should be about 300-ish with a tune, something like that. You might be able to get a little bit more. So they were bought straight from Audi at Teesside by Simon and Owen, who owned them before. That's at Swan Flight. So if you have a look at what they do on the website, there'll be a link below. They do all the flight cases for Formula One, all that sort of stuff. Do really nice things. They've done a few bits for us. So they went to Teesside Audi, bought two identical cars. The only difference in these is one digit on the VIN number and one digit on the reg number, which when they're wrapped the same and they've not got number plates on, is very difficult to determine who's who. So we're going to have Ryan and Scott written on the top of them. But anyway, they got them and they basically haggled a decent deal if they had a 30-day warranty. So they went straight to Croft and battered them to make sure nothing were going to fall off. Everything were good. Then they dropped them off at Jelly's at Slide Sports, which is an ex-F1 engineer. Used to work for Williams back in the day when they were doing the crazy stuff. So he does know what he's doing. He got the cars, stripped them out, didn't go too crazy. I think they were a bit of a time push on at this moment, so they didn't get like the full usual VW Cup strip out, which if you look at some of them cars, they're notching the transmission tunnel, they're stripping every tiny little bracket out and fully painting them and everything. Obviously these were brand new cars, so they never did that. They just literally got dropped off for a roll cage making with a bare interior, or as bare as it could be. I think the dashes were still in. So there's still work to be done there for us, which is a bit harder when the cage is in. But anyway, we'll worry about that later. When the cage and everything was sorted, it then had to go to the ABS Motorsports, which they made all this lovely-looking body kit, which I'm sure we've got better pictures than it just sat here. But basically, it's not an exact replica, but it's sort of with the loosely based around, I'm not sure how loosely, so correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, around the TT Cup cars, which that was a series in, I think it was about 2015 they originally started it, but in 2015 I found a little bit of stuff online, so we'll put some links to some of the things, and if you type TT Cup in, stuff comes up. But basically that were a championship that Audi started as an arrive and drive package, which I think it were 120,000 euros a year, something like that, which for the level it were at, not really that expensive, but in relative terms, not cheap. And that followed the DTM around, so it's like the biggest motorsport in Germany and probably Europe. So they use that as like a feeder series to find new drivers to either go to DTM, GT3, all that sort of stuff. So pretty popular. It were always oversubscribed. I think there were 100 odd people entered, there were only 16 cars, something like that. But they were pretty much this sort of spec car. It was the front wheel drive, DSG. They kept the ABS in, which these are not, 'cause it's VW Cup car. They kept the ABS, and they had the electronic differential on them ones, which is like what the Cupras and the Golf, Club Sports, and a few others. Danny will know which one's coming there. It's like an Aldex coupling that does like a E-diff. And that championship then, it always, every round had a guest driver who were a pro and a guest driver who generally was a journalist. I'm sure there are exceptions to that rule. And that went on for 3 years, and then all of those cars got crushed. I am told there's a couple of them still in Europe and one in the UK that's getting a 5-cylinder TT engine in it. But when they were built, they went to TCR regulations, so they originally raced them in the TCR UK as well when they're developing the first car, so that's quite interesting, really. This is not built to them specs. This was built to run in the VW Cup, which in the first race it ever did, I believe, I might be wrong again, the first race he's ever did, it won, which were pretty good. But usually when you build a new car and you win, everybody thinks you're cheating. So then there were quite a few limitations on what could be done to these cars, because most of the cars were Golfs and stuff like that, and a lot of older stuff as well, because this was 2017, when the VW Cup was quite popular. So basically the splitters had to be took down, which this needs a new one. They had to all be cut down. The spoilers, they couldn't play with them, they couldn't play with any flat floors. The track width were limited, which these are our wheels, which stick out a little bit more. But you see the rear, they don't stick out a lot. That were all limited by the VW Cup regulations. We've got a couple of pictures as well that will flash up. These did a 1-2 finish at Snetterton one time, and then in 2019, these cars, or one of the cars, won the VW Cup as well. I think it was Owen who were driving that one, I can't remember. Simon will probably be upset if I say that. These didn't get used at all last year in 2020. Obviously COVID cut things short, but Simon Swanfly, he also runs the Focus Cup, which Scott's been doing a bit of racing in, and he's been busy doing that. So these cars just sat there doing nothing at Jelly's place. It just got casually mentioned to Scott that these are for sale, do we want to buy them? X amount of money, which weren't too expensive, which I don't think we need to talk about how much they actually were, but you'd definitely be hard pushed to build these cars for how much we paid for them. I don't even think we could buy, so we've only done like 6,000 miles, which track miles, but anyway, you wouldn't be able to buy the standard cars and a few of the mods for that sort of money. So I think we've done all right out of them. We'll see how reliable they end up being. Comparing when we did the first test, which if you watch that video, I didn't really talk too much about them because it was late, getting dark, and we needed to get them tested quickly. And we've got a load of spares to sort out, which Toby's just getting out of the trailer now because he forgot about them. But when we took these to Donington, we also took a set of our wheels and tyres, which they were worn and they weren't the best ones, they weren't brand new. We took them with us and swapped them. So one car we tested on slicks, which were this one, and one car we tested on the Yokohama tyres, which we normally run on our cars. And they're about a 1.5 difference in them, something like that. Probably have to look a bit deeper into V-Box to be exactly sure. But about a 1.5 difference in them, which I'd expect a little bit bigger gap between the 52s and the slicks, but the slicks were old, the 52s were old, so maybe the gap had widened to a 1.5, 2 seconds. But anyway, we were doing lap times in the car on slicks that were pretty similar to the fastest sort of times we'd done in the Golf, so we were happy. We expected these to be more powerful because the VW Cup regs are a little bit more relaxed than the sort of in between Class A and Class S in the championship we run in, which we're in Class A, so not quite the top spec, but not quite at the bottom. So we expect them to be faster. They definitely felt faster at the end of the straight when you're braking. And obviously this, being a petrol engine, a little bit better response and a lot more revs than the diesel. So I think the feeling that you're going faster sometimes comes across more than the actual speed that you're doing. But anyway, so the lap time, when we had a look after coming back at the lap times, the Golf, which has got a lot more done to it chassis wise, we've got upgraded subframes, bottom arms and wider track and all that sort of stuff, and much stiffer springs. And we were so much quicker in the corners in the Golf, but on the straight, I think it was about, I'm sure I'm wrong again, but it was something like 8 miles per hour quicker through Craners, which is a fast flowing corner at Donington Park, which we'll put a video of what that looks like in either this or the Golf or whatever. But on the straights, we're about 8 miles per hour down, which we were expecting that to be a power thing and what have you. So when we got back, we put both of them on the dyno, and one of them had a couple of little blips here and there, so we knew there was going to be something wrong with that. That got a few fault codes on, which is the other car. This car were fine, but this one did, I think, 280 horsepower, and the other one did 260 with a bit of a weird dip at the end because of these weird fault codes to the throttle body or something like that. So they weren't as powerful as we expected. The Golf's probably, in the spec that we took the Golf to Donington and did the speeds and the times that we're saying, were probably 265, 270 horsepower. So the difference in speed is quite a bit more than we expected. So I think the shape of this car is what I'm getting at. The shape of this car is better. So we've got a lot better aerodynamics. I think the splitter probably works a little bit better without being as draggy, and the spoiler, looking at the angle of it, is totally wrong, which probably means it's not giving us much downforce, but that'll help us on the straights. So really happy we are performing for the power that we're at. We're a little bit disappointed that they weren't faster, thinking it was 300 horsepower. So I'm happy that we're a little bit down on what we expected and the times were still there. And we've just weighed it as well, which this weighs empty with no fuel, no ballast, around 1180, which is still quite heavy for a race car. I think there's probably 50 or 60 kilos to come out of it maybe, so it'd be nice if we can. If we get to 1150, I'd be happy. But this is probably at the minute about 40 kilos lighter than the Golf, which is pretty good really. I think there's probably only weight to come out of this rather than banging loads of weight on. Getting more into what the spec is now, we've took the seat out and I've put the seat that's actually going to be the passenger seat in this when we next go on a track day, and we're going to take some people out of them in them. But I've sold the other seats already to one of the lads here. But other than that, it's pretty much as it came. So obviously body kit, engine's just literally got a remap on it, which, just pop the bonnet. So it's VW Cup spec, so they all had to run these air filters, racing line engine mounts, which we'll be swapping for Vibratechnics when they're sorted, catch can, breather setup, so all the sort of common problems. We're going to change the dump valve. Yeah, we'll talk about all that later anyway, but there's a few other things. Still got the standard radiator and intercooler and the oil cooling, because these cars were only used for sort of 20-minute sprint races, not the 45-minute races that we're expecting to do. Suspension wise, they've just got poly bushers everywhere that I've seen so far. But then we've got these Moton, which Moton AST, same company, but these are like the premium brand shock absorbers. These are they're about £6 for a set, something stupid like that, crazy. So I'm hoping, these are really softly sprung at the minute, because when you go to slick you don't need a stiffer spring. And even these, when they're supplied for treaded road tyres, the springs are still not as stiff as what we run on the Golf. But I don't want to do anything too crazy, because these were actually set up a company called Multimatic, which is an absolutely massive company, but they do a lot of motorsport stuff, and they basically put it on like a chassis rig which we've got a video of it somewhere. If we can put it in, we will. But basically, they just pump away at the wheels and set them at all different frequencies, and then they determine what spring and damping rates and everything you want to do, and then you take it to the track, and in theory, it should be almost perfect. But we're changing the tyres on this, so we are going to knock all that right out of sync, so we're probably going to end up starting again with the damper settings and the spring rates and stuff. So we'll see. I'm going to speak to Moton about that. I'm going to ring him pretty much after I've done this video and just have a chat what we can do and what we think we can improve on, because they definitely were rolling too much, rolling onto the edge of the tyres too much, especially with how much camber and everything we've got. But these are freeway adjustable. They are really good quality, comparable to the Olins that everybody in the VW Cup were running. These are Olins, I believe, by the end, and if the budget allowed anyway. So we'll see. Arm wise, hub wise, everything is just totally standard. Like I said, just polybushed, which the Golf's a lot more developed than that. And then brake wise, I think while we're still here, the ABS is capped off, so that's not actually working at the minute, because that's VW Cup regulations. But we've still got the servo, which no ABS, servo assisted. And then when you've got brakes like this, which these are identical to what we've got on the Golf, AP Pro 5000, I think these are the wide ones like the Golf as well, and the British touring car discs. They're way too grabby at the minute for having the servo on, so we might have to come up with a way of getting rid of the servo. But I really don't want to put a pedal box in these because it's absolute pig to do, but if we have to, we will. I'm sure I've missed loads of things out on the spec as they are now. It's irrelevant really, it's what we're going to do to it that everybody will be screaming at the phones and asking what are we going to do. So obviously, petrols, I always make a joke that it makes me feel sick when I'm filling them up at the fuel station or whatever, but in all honesty, this engine, the new EA 888 engine, they're absolutely amazing for what they are. They drive like a diesel, they drink petrol like a petrol though, that's the only problem. But they've got loads of torque. This, as standard, has only got a small turbo on. So if we are going to keep one of them petrol, which I think we probably are, we're going to put a Golf R turbo on, which we've already got anyway. So we can probably push this up to 400 horsepower if we wanted. But to fit in the regs with the weight that we've got and the power that we want to be in Class S and be competing with the TCR cars, we'd only need to be about 330, 340 horsepower, something like that. So we'll see what we need to do with it. But that should be reliable with a bigger turbo. We can use all the revs. There's no point having a petrol engine, and this really can change up at £6,000 and still keeping the meat of the power. I'd rather be revving it a little bit more and making the most of it being a petrol. If we do keep both of them, I want to race one in some other championships that our diesel cars just don't fit into either the regulations, or if they just don't suit the type of racing. Like in the Club Enduro, we raced Nick's Leon at the beginning of, I think it was this year maybe, can't remember, all moulded into one last 2 or 3 years. But Scott raced it in that, and basically because we're a diesel and we've got more torque, they gave us a 1.1 power multiplier, which meant we just weren't competitive. You could catch everybody under braking, mid-corner, corner exit, and then they'd just drive away from you on the straight. So it weren't an enjoyable race. It weren't ever going to be competitive. I think it was being penalised too much. Maybe a multiplier of some description would work, but I don't think it needed to be 10%. But anyway, so if we keep one of them petrol, we can definitely race in like the Club Enduro, which are 2-hour races, which really suits me and Scott. 'Cause if we go in to the track, I want to be there racing for a while, not a 20-minute sprint race. So we'll definitely keep one of them petrol. If we convert in one of them to diesel, I think the plan's going to be do what we did to Steph's van, probably the Passat 240 horsepower engine, leave the engine standard, big turbo, and try and make it compete with either this or put it into the class above the Golf in the Class S. But we'll see. It depends where we put them. I think it'd be nice if this can go Class S and faster, and then if we put a diesel in, we can go Class A, Class S, and decide which we're going in and have switchable ECUs like we do with the other one. Chassis wise, it's obviously going to get all the same stuff as the Golf. We're still in talks with Erkline about trying to get a deal on tour everything, and hopefully we can do some back-to-back testing for him and prove that the stuff does work, because it looks nice, but we've never done a back-to-back test to see. So these are the perfect vehicles to do that, at least while we leave them as petrols. So I think the diesel conversion probably won't happen over winter, because I didn't want these projects again. But if we're just tuning the petrol engines that are in these and just racing them, we've definitely got time and we've got the manpower to be able to do that. I can bring in people to help us with the racing. But if we start putting engines in, it means Paul will be busy wiring again, and I don't like keeping Paul too busy. Not when we've still got a V12 project that wants doing. So yeah, we've got a race. It was 2 weeks this weekend, and we've still, other than weighing it, taking some parts off it, we've still not done anything to this yet. So we need to get cracking really. I want to do all the cooling mods, so DSG cooler, upgraded intercooler, upgraded radiator, oil cooler. Probably not going to have time for the turbo. We're going to probably have to turn it down a bit, because the next race that I can put it in, it needs to be less power than it is at the minute. It only can be about 250 or something like that. So yeah, we need to get cracking. Less than 2 weeks to get this ready. We're absolutely stupidly busy this week as well, so I can't see when we're going to really be doing anything too crazy on this. But I'm going to get all the parts out anyway, introduce that video, and then the lads are going to have to just fit it in between everything they're doing. There's not going to be like a day or two, because I think we need probably 2 days for, well, a day for each person, maybe a little bit more, to get sorted what we need to get sorted. And then we can take it to that race, give it a shakedown. Then the next event will be a track day, where we're going to passenger seat and take everybody out as well. So let's see. Hopefully this video's not been too boring. Danny's going to have to definitely cut loads of crap out. But yeah, these cars, really happy with them. Everybody who sees them thinks they look fast, but that's only part of it. There's loads of cars in paddock that look fast. We need them to be fast and win some races, so cheers.